Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good wherever you are in the world. Welcome,
Hello,
sir.
hello, hello. Welcome to Hypnotic Rambles, episode 7.
I'm glad you remember what number it is. We've missed a couple of weeks because you're in Hungary and I'm just back from Vegas.
Yes, yes, yes. But it is what it is. We are just going to
Absolutely.
continue where we left off. And today we are talking about parts or ego states. And we are going to explain what they are and our experiences and our own personal opinions about
Yeah.
them.
Well, they seem a bit scary when you start, don't they? It's like there's a part of us. Ooh, personality type. Am I multiple personalities? We all are, aren't we?
Yeah, but it's nothing to do with multiple personality disorder.
No.
It's all about what we sometimes say, or especially here in Hungary, that we wear the hat. Yeah, I'm wearing my work hat. I'm wearing
Yeah.
my mother hat. So I always explain it in a way that um, that is more familiar to everyone, so they can, other people can understand it. People who never ever heard about these things. So, for example, right now, I have an ego state or part at the executive that knows all about hypnosis, all about
Well, hold
therapies,
on.
all about. Hmm?
To use an expression I used to hear on television here, back up the truck, right? So because
Okay.
you've gone into ego states, parts, and executive, so you better explain what all this stuff is.
I was going to get to that.
Oh, okay.
Meaning that if a part comes to the executive, it's who's talking
Okay.
at any given moment, right? So the part of me that knows all about hypnosis is at the front now, it's talking. But if my daughter or my son would walk up to me, I would turn in that second and the mother part would come out and talk to them differently. And interestingly, even between them, I talk a little bit differently because we all adapt our personality to the person that is in front of us that we are talking to, right? So even though I am a mother of two, I do not talk the same way, like completely same way to my children because they have different personalities. So I have to adapt mine to theirs.
Yeah. And I've always viewed that as, I'm a father, so that's one set of personality. That's one way I'll behave. When I'm working, I'll behave in a different way. When I'm with friends, I'll behave in a different way. It's just like a different sub-personality part of us comes out. Um, and they all have different characteristics.
They
So,
do.
but they develop over time. That's the interesting thing. And I know depending on who's speaking, really, you will get different interpretations of ego states or parts. And ego states and parts are pretty much the same thing. They're interchangeable terms, but you'll get different definitions of how to work with them. Some trainers will work with them in general, the part that runs X, just bring to the executive. Other trainers will have the various parts all coming together and working with them in that way. But how do we develop parts?
I think in childhood, I mean, as we grow up, we straight away start to develop. So we learn that, okay, that's the mother figure, right? That's my mom. I need to behave in a certain way. So I adapt to her personality, right? So she likes me more, if you like, because that's what we do as children, right? We want to be liked, we want to be accepted, and we want to be good, if you like,
Yeah.
right? Not naughty, not to be told off. So what do I need to do? So this is how we, for example, this is how I personally develop my daughter part, which, by the way, now that I am here in Hungary, comes out regularly. But when I am back in the UK, it's not there constantly because I do not, I'm not in touch with my mother on a daily basis regularly, which is quite interesting.
So the environment creates the behaviors, which then creates the beliefs, which creates the part.
Yes, I'd say
There you
so.
go.
Yeah. Yeah. But that again is our own opinion, right?
No,
Based
that's
on our
true.
experiences. So you're more than welcome to
No, that's absolutely true. And
look at it
I
differently.
mean, if you're a hypnotist listening to this, you've probably heard this before, but if you're not, then maybe this is brand new to you. But the definition that I love to use to explain it is that and most people have learned how to drive, but you can use walking or whatever as an example of, when you first learn to drive, you know every turn of the steering wheel, every turn, every time you press the indicator. If you drive in Europe and use a clutch car, it conks out many times. You know when to turn, and then you're very slow and careful. But at some point in time, you reach your destination and you go, "Oh, I don't even remember my journey." And it's like the mind goes, "All right, I can
Which
take
isn't
that."
very safe, by the way.
But it's always bringing you back. So you always know that in the event of, in the event of a car coming towards you, your unconscious is going to just alert you to it. It just happens. Um, but like we can walk. At one time we couldn't walk, but now we can walk down the street, hold a conversation, be on the phone, be looking around us. We don't think about every step that we did when we were children. It's like we develop a part that runs. Um, and in a lot of cases, that becomes a behavior issue. So there's behaviors that become our parts, our responses to certain things, like you're talking about when you're in Hungary. Or as I came across recently, someone who had, anxiety and but they were originally Italian. They went back to Italy and all the environment just brought back all those circumstances, needed more work.
They do.
So it's kind of like, the environment does trigger, and when we go back to those places, it will kick those behaviors start to kick back in again. But working with that part then becomes, I suppose, in a lot of cases, the key to change.
Yeah, and my next question, or almost just like a statement that I'd like to say, is that let's talk about now the reason why we need to know more about the parts and our parts or ego states. Are there any other names, you know?
They're the two that I primarily use, parents
Yeah,
or ego states. And for me, it's because the behaviors become the equivalent of a certain trigger happens. And like you described, you're back in Hungary, your daughter syndrome, your daughter part kicks back in. Um, it's a bit like if something happens, for say someone who smokes, if the phone rings and they pick up a phone and they grab a cigarette, it's like the part kicks in that does that.
yeah,
Um, so it's working with that part and it's educating that part um, to realize. I often, I mean, one of the things that I do when I'll explain it as follows. Um, Today happens to be the 30th of July, 2024. And I'll make a statement and I'll go, today is the 30th of June, 2024. Everything that happened before today is over. You're not the same person. Your logical brain knows that, but your emotional brain doesn't. So it's a bit like reframing it so the emotional brain can start to let go of some of the stuff. It's about re-educating it. That's one of the ways that I tend to treat it. But you're still working with that part, and it can either be a conversation or you can have phenomena where hands move, ideomotor signals, whatever it is that allow, I suppose, the evidence to the mind to change.
yeah, and I think a really, really simple example of that or explanation of it is that, for example, when we are struggling with eating or weight gaining, losing weight. And then there's a part of me that really wants to eat the chocolate cake. There's a part of me that really does not want to, or wants me to just leave it there, right? Then we straight away know that there's a conflict between two parts at
Yeah,
least,
yeah,
right? And also, anytime we have any kind of issues with food, or I'm not saying always, but majority of the time we don't have the binge eating part that comes up throughout the day, 24/7. There are also, different times. So we know that there's just at least one part that needs to be looked at, worked with, or understood.
yeah,
Think about these parts as again, like your friends or your it is all my parts are me, right? And the aim uh, in parts therapy or ego state therapy is to bring them together to become friends. So every single part will understand each other, and then they work in harmony. So the person like me here can live the life to the fullest. So all
yeah,
my parts are helping me, guiding me.
Yeah.
to the life that I want to
Right.
experience, right? And I
And
think it's the same with anxiety as well, because anxiety, yes, it is there, but more often it comes out in situations when it's triggered, right? So it's that part that sometimes it goes back. I love Mike Mendel's explanation of the ego state. So, past, do you remember that?
yes, I
How he
do.
explained, you know, the
Like
big room. I
it's like a
love that.
bungalow. It's like a
Yes.
bungalow, and there's maybe between 5 and 15 parts, if you like, in that room, and depending on the environment that knocks on the door is the part that goes to answer the door, and the answering the door is the executive.
And then what John is meaning by knocking on the door, whoever is contacting you, either in person or on the phone or via text message or email or any way, shape, or form, somebody that is trying to contact you, like get engaging with you, that's the person who knocks on that door, right?
Yeah.
And
So like
then
when you're in
whoever
Hungary,
comes to the executive is that part of you that will answer that message, reply, or pick up the phone or speak to that person.
absolutely, or and that can be a mood thing. In the case of in the case of say someone who's feeling a little unhappy and normally reverts to food as a source. It's like that younger child that remembers that party that allows that food and then suddenly starts to look for that sweet cake, as a response to a low mood. So it doesn't have to be a person, but it's an environment really that's created, whether it's internal or external, because everything's internal anyway when we think about it.
Yeah.
All we do is we internalize what the external. Um, but like in your case, going back to Hungary, it's like that daughter version of you comes out. I'm sorry for keep bringing that up, but there
No,
you
no,
go.
no, that's
Good
fine. It's a
example.
perfect
It's a
example.
perfect example, yeah. But then, of course, in also in Mike's ego state is what he calls the bunker room, the wounded parts, the parts that only come out every so often. And they're the parts that really probably need most of the attention. But one of the things that constantly comes into play in parts is that they're formed at certain ages and stages in life.
Mm,
Um, so because they're formed at certain ages and stages, like when that environment kicks in, it's like we go back to that age or stage. It's like that movie is playing in full,
yeah,
that part has just kicked in. So it's about that part recognizing that whatever those circumstances were are no longer the same.
yeah,
And even if they could reoccur in the exact same form, that we're different. We'd respond differently. We don't need to respond in that same way.
yeah,
Particularly if it's a behavior that no longer suits us.
yeah, yeah.
Whether
And
that's overeating or whatever that case may be, or anxious or, you know, whatever.
yeah, and what you mean by wounded parts is the ego states or parts of us that got hurt along the way throughout our life, and they are holding on to feelings and emotions that are really, really painful. So they are in the basement. And many a times we have other parts who are making sure that those parts are not coming to the executive, right? But also they are trying. Let's not forget that we need to feel the emotions if we want to
Release,
I don't like to say get rid of them, but we need to understand
but to
them.
release the emotion. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, a very simple and I think very common example here is food. So I get triggered, which I may not even be aware of. And then that part, that wounded part is trying to come up. Listen, you really need to listen to me right now, right? Because it's been going on for so long now. Come on, you need to listen to me. And another part will come and take over and make me go for chocolate or food or make me binge eat. So I don't have to feel those feelings that the wounded part is holding on to. So what we can do in hypnosis is to get to these spots and then heal them. And I think it's a beautiful, magical experience. And then the
It is.
result is wow every
And
time we do that. I love
and
it.
we don't change the fact that something happened, but what we do is we re-educate that younger version of us, that part of us that was formed at that time. But we don't change what happens. we can't change the fact that something did happen,
We cannot exactly, yeah.
but we can change the emotion around it, the meaning and significance that it has for us in our lives, and how the fact that, like working with somebody recently who, is a father, is a husband, is a responsible employee, but yet at certain times a teenage part kicks in at various times during the day. And it's about re-educating that teenage part to the fact that no, 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 I'm a father now. I'm a husband. I'm a very responsible. I can't be doing that. Those circumstances no longer exist. All right. And then there's a parts negotiation in whatever form, whether it's
Yeah.
through phenomena or whether it's through, non-verbal phenomena, as in it's all done internally, or whether there's the actual verbal conversation of, well, what do we want to behave in place? So what part of us can do that, can be recognized, can be confident, and can deal with this in a way that's not childlike anymore.
Exactly, because what we need to also know about is that all the parts are doing their best. They want the best for us. They just don't know that what was created back in the day, right, back at that moment when something happened, is not happening anymore. So it's not right, but they are still running that protective um,
Mechanism,
mechanism,
whatever
right?
you want to call it.
And what they need to know is that it's not happening anymore, and then also they need to be told that the behavior is harmful now because binge eating is harmful, smoking cigarettes is harmful, or whatever. There are so many other habits and behaviors that we do that are not good, or it's simply just we know that it's not good for us and we don't want to do it anymore. And then we can work with those parts to negotiation, that's what we call it, and then just change the behavior something more beneficial for us. So, instead of going for that chocolate cake, so I don't feel the emotion, how about dealing with the wounded part? And then we will not need that behavior anymore, isn't it? It's
Absolutely.
one of
And
those things as well.
it- I mean, there's two things to point out. One is that, I mean, we use the term parts and ego states, but what they actually are is neural pathways. They literally are neural
Yeah,
pathways in our brain. And there's all kinds of evidence to that effect. But the second thing is that those responses are in our emotional brain. They're not in our logical brain because logically we know that we shouldn't have that cake or have that cigarette or be anxious about something in particular. But yet that's what happens. Um, and hypnosis is perfect for dealing with the emotional brain. It is the therapy to deal with the emotional brain.
absolutely. Yeah.
It's quicker, it's far more effective, and it is the avenue that allows change to happen. Um, and the change is actually for the client. It's not, for the therapist. Some people look at hypnosis and go, I'm afraid of this. But we're actually working for the client each and every time.
Mm.
And I know we know that, but sometimes with the fear that clients have about hypnosis, it's kind of like because they've seen the film or stage or whatever it is. It's about, no, once we access with your permission, your emotional brain, then that change that you want actually can take place because you're the
Yeah.
one who wants it and it can't happen without you wanting it.
Yeah. So I actually will say something that other hypnotherapists might disagree with, and that's
But it's
absolutely
only
fine.
your
I always
opinion.
say this is just my own opinion. But in my own experience, as in my life,
Mm.
um, working on myself quite a lot, and working with clients as well, I can actually say that majority, if not all, the problems are going back to parts. And when we do that, we can do major work, major results we can achieve. I really, even if it's something small, because what happens is when we actually working with these parts, other things are coming into place as well. So they become the harmony is even more there rather than just working with one single feeling or emotion. And I think it's really, really magical. What do you think about that?
I think parts therapy, ego state therapy, whatever name you want to give it, it's a really, really vital part. It's why I use it in most of my sessions, not all, it depends. Um, but it's one of the primary keys to change because it creates an internal conversation that recognizes that the circumstances that existed when this ego state part was formed are no longer valid. And there's a whole lot of new alternatives that we can apply today that, as David Snyder would say, make your life better as you define it by your standards and by your definitions.
Beautiful. So next one, the question is, how can the audience become aware of all this in their own
Notice,
life?
notice their own behavior. Notice that if there are certain things that they're doing that they don't like, notice the circumstances in which they arise.
Yeah. And also, I think another part of this is, you know, let's imagine that I worked on myself quite a lot and I am so much more calmer, so much more nicer, and, taking
You're always nice. Now
responsibility.
stop that.
But then there are certain maybe people or situations where I am not at my best, right? And not for others, but for my own self. And that's something to become aware of, right? Okay, hang on a minute. With this person, why can't I just be calmer? Because there's a part that
There's,
is really
there's,
triggered by it. And I think
yeah,
that's,
there's an emotional response there
yeah,
somewhere. And it is in the emotion. So if we're feeling a negative emotion about anything, that is an internal signal to say that something's not right, that we're just not responding the way we
mm,
want to be. Something is not the way we want it to be. And that's probably the ultimate signal once we feel negative emotion is how do we how do we change that negative emotion? What is it about us that we need to change? Um, because expectation creates the results, and it's what we expect for ourselves. If we're not getting it, and sometimes, working a lot with trauma type and wounded child type stuff, you'll get this feeling of I'm not good enough. Where does that come from? It's a belief, it's a part that's installed. I'm just not good enough.
that's a
How
foundational belief.
And
I
that's a
would, I
foundational.
would
And
say,
then,
yeah.
yeah, and then you're going back to, almost the emotional body and where is that emotion stored and how do we release it? Obviously, in kinetic shift is one of the ways in which that can be addressed and then replaced. There are other ways in your child work. There's all kinds of stuff. Parts is the other way. Um, but yeah, there's multiple ways in which to change that. Parts is one of the primary methods that I will use, though. I really do love that technique.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there are so many ways to do it as
Yeah,
well. I
absolutely.
think which is beauty. I mean, we are doing it for ourselves now, which is amazing, I think.
Yeah, no,
Um,
absolutely.
I think that is beautiful. Right. So is there anything else that we need to or we would like to cover here?
And I mean, I think the big thing would be that in relation to parents or ego state, it's about recognizing the behaviors that we do that we don't want, that cause us
Yeah.
to feel negative emotion in some point, and then not to be afraid of them. It's not that they're, some kind of disorder. They're just a behavior that's been built up, a neural pathway that is our response to an environmental thing that happened to us when we were younger, or when something that happened to us before. Um, it doesn't need to be regressed. It doesn't need to be. It's just it's parts is a lovely way to deal with it because you're not actually going back to deal with the regression side of it. What you're literally dealing with is here's your response to a certain behavior. You don't like that, right? Do you recognize now yeah, okay. Well, then what do you want to put in its place? And it pretty much is probably that simple.
Yeah, it's like it's very. I think it's really easy to think of them as workers, if you like, not like as in workers, but it's like in a company. So you give them what they need to do to them, and they will do it to their best ability. But they can only do it if we are guiding them, telling them that
Right.
that's the right way to do it or that's the wrong way to do it. But again, not never to tell them off or anything like that. Hear them out, understand them because it's all about understanding ourselves, isn't it?
Yes, and I think you said it before in a previous podcast of it's a bit like, if a child comes in and they have something to say and you ignore them, they're just going to keep getting louder and louder and louder and louder.
Olivia,
And
I can
and
promise
and
you that.
our parents will do the same thing.
Yeah,
Um, and in moments of quietness, they'll just pop up, or in environmental issues that will trigger them, environmental circumstances that will trigger them, they will pop up and they'll keep popping up. So I think probably the biggest message is that people have the keys to change.
Hmm.
Once we're aware of something, um, then it's almost our responsibility to try and fix it for ourselves, or to get the help that we need to
Well,
fix it.
it's not almost, it is our responsibility.
It is our responsibility, and therefore, um, but it's our responsibility to give ourselves the best life that we can, and just to feel better in every moment, and just get the best version of us out there each and every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, you've mentioned that, you know, notice if there's a behavior and it's like negative, you don't want it. But you can actually use this for positive ones if you want to make it stronger or better. If you want to improve it, you can actually work with those parts who are already doing absolutely great, but you want to be better at something. Then I think it's another way
Think of
to
a
improve.
positive emotion right now. Think of a positive behavior right now.
A positive yoga.
Right.
I
Think about
love that
yoga.
part of me that loves doing yoga.
Right. So
I
that
think it's
you love the part that loves yoga. Where do you feel that part?
all over. Yoga is all
Oh,
over.
what color
All
is it?
over.
What
I
color is
don't
it?
know. I don't have colors.
You don't have a color. Well,
Remember?
just turn it all the way up. Just turn it, keep
Yeah.
turning it up, and get that smile wider and wider as you turn it higher and higher and
But I'm
higher.
just gonna go and do
There you
yoga
go.
more.
You'll
I've
be
done
doing
my
yoga
yoga
for the
today.
rest of the day. See the smile on her face?
Yeah, because that part of me, because it's like I thought you were gonna ask me something about yoga.
No, no,
You
no.
see, that part of me is like,
I
I
was just
want
going to
more.
expand it and widen it. That's all.
Yeah, but you can actually see on a person when a part comes to the
Yeah,
executive, right? They are like something like they really
absolutely.
laugh,
There,
and
it was
it's
on
just
your
like,
face.
oh, it's just gonna come out, and then you can just see them that they change completely. It really, and another really cute example is when somebody has a pet and they're talking to you like really like just normal, and then their pet comes to them and they're gonna just, oh, cutie pie, kitty cat. You know, they even change their voice. That part comes out, and it's fascinating, I think.
Absolutely correct. And yeah, I love working with parts because they are the key to change.
Yeah,
But as you said, not only are they the key to change, they're the key to a happier life. Because if you keep
yeah,
bringing out the parts that you love in your life, the ego states that make you feel better, just like yoga and the smile on your face there a moment ago, is like life is better. Isn't that what it's all about?
yeah, yeah. We are here to help you to live the
Absolutely.
best possible life ever.
That's it.
And we're going to help you any way we can. So we're going to bring this to a close now.
Absolutely.
Any questions, any comments,
Um,
feedback? Feel free
absolutely.
to send it to us. And
And we will
so
give
this
you
is
our
how we can improve.
opinion.
Hmm?
We will ramble through our opinion on it.
Always, always. We love a good ramble.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So I don't know what next week is, but you'll know because you're the one.
we'll we'll do our very best to give you another one next week.
Absolutely.
But you know,
I'm home.
it's summer
You're still
here. It's
away.
really, really hot in here. So
No, I'm back to normal. You're still on holiday mode.
well,
Even though
actually,
I was
I'm always
working
on
when I was
holiday.
supposed to
I'm
be on
always
holiday.
on holiday throughout the year, and that's what I want. I actually just thought of that today. That I never think of. Well, I can't wait for the weekend, or I can't wait for this, or because I believe that we need to spend our time, days, weeks, the way we like them, so that way you don't need to look forward to the weekend because every day is really good. It's like the
You
weekend.
keep bringing out the ego state that enjoys life every moment.
I do enjoy life. That is true.
What
I
it happens.
do. I make the most of it every single day. But with that, thank you so much for listening and watching us. And I
See
don't
you
know,
next.
just good evening, good morning. Have a
Yeah,
magical day wherever you
wherever
are.
you're
And
in the world.
we'll see you
Bye-bye.
next time.